Hi, good evening. My name is Raimundo, and we're here in Community Advisors RSR. And we're here with candidate Cheri Thomas, who's running for the 14th Court of Appeals, place two. And we're going to be talking about elections, politics, all the boring stuff, but that you should know and that you should care because politics and politicians, people who run for office, you eventually become politicians or elected officials and make decisions for us. And without saying any more, we welcome Cheri Thomas.
Thank you for having me, Raimundo. Should I
Awesome.
get
So,
started? Go ahead.
yes. So, can you give us your title as to what you do? And for you're an attorney, all your background, so that people know who you are and why you're the best candidate out there for that office.
Sure. Yes, I'm a 17-year lawyer. Right now, I'm currently working at Lewis Thomas Law PC, where I work primarily on federal criminal appeals. I also do some personal injury matters and property damage matters, and as well as employment matters. But I'm a 17-year lawyer. I started out my very first job out of law school. I worked for a federal judge as a law clerk in Dallas. George Solis was the judge. And that was a great experience. You know, right out of law school, I got right into the courtroom and to see kind of the behind the scenes of the courtroom. As a law clerk, for federal judges, you work on drafting orders for motions. And so that's what I would do. I got to have that experience right out of law school. And the judge was an excellent mentor. From there, I went to work at Baker Botts, which is a large law firm. It's actually a leading national law firm, but it's headquartered in Houston and has a very large office in Houston. It's well regarded as one of the best firms in Texas. So I got to work with a lot of smart people and got a lot of good training there at Baker Botts. And I got to work on a variety of matters. You can interrupt me at any time if I'm starting to worry.
Yes, so it sounds like you have a very interesting background and you're very qualified for that office. And Cheri Thomas ran for office this previous election. That office was the people were running for that office. The incumbent, it's my understanding that he won that election, but Cheri Thomas was a person for the people. There was a lot of people who voted for her and that supported her, and I was one of them. We're nonpartisan and community advisors are, but I did support Cheri Thomas. And all the energy that she brings whenever politicking, all the happiness, and it's so awesome. And can you tell us about the experience of you running for office from the ground all the way to the days of the election, all the emotions, all this? I know that it's very stressful. Maybe you can share a light for those women who are looking to run for office one day. In Harris County, a lot of women are running for office and they're winning. That's good.
Yes.
So can you share some of that information and motivating other women to run for office and also motivating those in general who want to run for office?
Yes. Well, I will say it's not rocket science. If I can do it, you can do it too. It is a lot of hard work, and it's a lot of, for me, it took me outside of my comfort zone because what I didn't finish all my experience. I have more, but I have been for several years primarily an appellate lawyer. So that's a lot of writing. And, I most of my days are spent in front of the computer researching cases or writing briefs. And so that's very introverted. Well, campaigning obviously is very extroverted. You got to go out and meet people, and people you don't know. You have to ask them to get them to lend you their ear, and try to care about the courts, and especially that's kind of a difficult situation. The courts aren't always as exciting or sexy as like a legislative position, because legislators get to make the law. Courts just get to interpret the law. And there's so many in Harris County. There are so many people running for office, running for judge positions, because there are just so many judge positions available. that, you know, you got to really work hard to connect with people and stand out. And I had a really unique race last time. You were mentioning I ran previously. I ran for a different position on the same court, but in the primary there ended up being 6 candidates. So you know, I also had to distinguish myself from the other candidates in the race, and that was an interesting experience. You know, as a lawyer, it was one of the great parts of it. It was getting to know um, not just the people and what they had, you know, what their interests were and what was important to them, but also the other candidates. And I was more informed than I ever have been because I got to know a lot of candidates personally, and that was very interesting for me. But so back to it, I mean, the campaign was also unique because in the middle of the campaign, right after the primary, I ended up in a runoff. But right after the primary is when the coronavirus, you know, came to light. And so most campaigning went virtual on Zoom. So, you know, we all had to figure out how to use Zoom, how to connect with people virtually instead of in person. You can't, you know, shake a hand on Zoom. And so that was an interesting experience as well. You mentioned that, you know, the Republican incumbent won the position I was running for, and that is interesting too. I wanted to point out that in Houston, and I can talk about kind of what the 14th Court of Appeals does, but in Houston, there are 2 different courts of appeal. And in the 2020 election, there were 4 positions that were essentially equivalent. And 2 of those positions went to Democrats and 2 of them went to Republicans, despite, you know, the same electorate. So that was very interesting to me. And you know, I might need a like crystal ball to find out why that was. But I do have some ideas. I think, you know, and that's one of those situations where qualifications made a difference, reputation made a difference, and hard work on the campaign made a difference. The woman who ended up in the primary as the Democratic candidate hadn't worked very hard to get out on the campaign trail, get endorsements. You know, there are so many groups that offer an opportunity to candidates to screen and you know, get their endorsement, and she didn't participate in a lot of the endorsements, and so in the end she didn't benefit from those endorsements. So if you're considering running for office, I think one of the most important things to do is not only to connect with individuals, you know, out on the campaign trail, but to connect with groups, participate in the endorsements and the screening opportunities that you're given. You know, just take every opportunity to help people to learn about you and your qualifications and what you care about, your values. I guess that would be my advice to people who are considering running.
And I totally agree. You have to be 24/7 active whenever you're running for office. And
I will say,
I have never been a candidate. Oh, go ahead. Go ahead.
No, before I got into it, I was like, oh, I'll go to, you know, campaigns three nights a week. That's not a reality. You're at campaign events 7 nights a week, or, you know, sometimes many different campaign events in one night. So, you know, that's something to consider. So.
Definitely, I agree. You have to have a lot of energy, and I saw that you had a lot of energy. You were so charismatic, so happy, and that energy you share. People were always, oh yes, I'm gonna vote for her. I remember because we were on the voting location on West Grade, and yeah, there's a lot of people that you convinced to vote for you. But elections are elections, and I know, and hopefully more people come out and vote, and hopefully people do their research and they realize that that there's good candidates who are qualified and who do the work like you. And but for that we have to inform the public and try to provide information, because you said it yourself. There's a lot of offices, a lot of benches that people have to elect politicians or candidates. And once you're there in the machine, scoring through all of that, I mean, there's like 20, 24. You're not gonna remember every single one of them, and plus, who's gonna do the research for that? We have to. So, um, going back to your election, what different strategies or how do you approach your election now that we're still dealing with COVID-19, even though there's news of people are more freely now and because there's a vaccine, and, but how are you engaging your audience, the public?
One thing that I did in the prior race and that I'll continue to do in this coming race is do a digital media campaign, where you try to spread the word about your campaign online, because so many people are, even though they can't get out, they're connecting with other people virtually on Facebook or other social media. And so that's an opportunity to, help people learn about your campaign. I also, I do need to figure out how to, I'm fully vaccinated, so I feel, a little more comfortable getting out and about. And it's one thing I need to research and consider is how to, we're at the point where we're going to have to start collecting signatures. Another thing is whenever you run for office, you have to collect so many signatures on a petition in order to get your name on the ballot officially. Well, this year is no exception. We still have to collect those. As far as I know, I haven't heard there's going to be any exception to collecting physical signatures. You can't get them digitally online. So I may have to be creative in trying to get, it's, you need to collect at least 250 signatures, but some candidates, for some positions, it requires a lot more. Obviously, with coronavirus going on, meeting 250 people in person is not ideal. But I do think people are, getting more and more vaccinated and hopefully more and more comfortable meeting in person. I know some groups have started meeting in outdoor events, socially distanced events. So I do want to participate in those, as well as, campaigning virtually through digital media campaigns and, interviews like this one, where you're meeting with candidates, taking time out of your day to inform the public about, what positions are coming up and what the candidates are about, and that's so important.
Awesome. So, since meeting people is very important, what would you tell the Hispanic and Latino community? Those folks that you saw in West Gray, you saw in different locations, the Hispanics that went to go out and vote. What would you tell them? What would you tell those who do not go to vote and who are eligible to vote? They're registered, they're in the system, but they don't vote. What would your message to convince them to go out and vote for Cheri Thomas for the Court of Appeals?
I think they should know their power, that they have a lot of power through their vote. Especially the Hispanic community in Houston is a huge community. It's a huge number of eligible voters. They could decide all the elections if they wanted to. If everyone would get out and vote, the Hispanic community as a block could make all the decisions. It's such a large and powerful community. I also think it's important for the judicial positions to know, that even though judicial candidates don't take positions on issues, you have candidates who are going to look at, cases more fairly, more, with more methodical, meticulous approach. Not every judge is I know they're down ballot races and it's hard to learn a lot about each candidate, but you want a judge who's going to be fair and serious, consider each case as if it was a case that was handled by, that involved a family member. So someone who's going to, not have any bias or discrimination towards any group whatsoever. That shouldn't ever factor into judicial decision. And I think, when I was a young lawyer, I was naive enough to think that, all judges were neutral and didn't, bias didn't factor into judicial decision making. But as I've, matured and practiced many years, I unfortunately realized that's not the case. So it's important. Their vote's important and powerful, And you know, also I also hope they know that they have the power to ask questions. You know, most candidates are willing to engage with almost, you know, anyone who wants to know about their campaign. So I think that's what I would say.
Yeah, I totally agree. That's how I met you. I went up and asked questions.
Yeah.
And that's
There's
how
a
I ended up supporting you. Uh, yeah, so this upcoming election, is it 2024, correct?
2022.
2022, interesting.
Yeah.
2022, just remember to vote for Cheri Thomas. It's running for a Court of Appeals. Any difficulties that you face running for office or that you're facing and running for office overall in politics? Since politics is used to be dominated by a lot of males, a lot of men, or is there anything that you saw or anything that, because in politics there's a lot of uh, not very nice people, and so in that sense, did you ever encounter that in your whenever you were running for office, as being a person who is the first time running? It was the first time running for office this previous uh, run you had.
You know, I think for the most part, people were friendly. I did encounter, you know, a few, you know, and especially in Democratic groups, you know, there is a real feeling that it's time to give women and people of color opportunities to be in positions of power. And that was really evidenced in the election results and, you know, the primary results in 2020. I think for every position where there was a woman, the women won each primary. So that's, you know, may not be the case in a Republican primary, but it certainly is the case in a Democratic primary. I did, you know, meet a few groups where it was they were kind of like boys clubs, but I feel like the more they got to know me, the more comfortable they felt with me. And, you know, I do think it's hard just coming in as an outsider, because a lot of people who are involved in Democratic groups and Democratic lawyer groups, have been doing activist work. They've been doing work to get out the vote for many years. So if you, as you come in as, you know, an experienced lawyer, that's all good and all, but you don't have that, you know, those activist credentials. You know, you're just an unknown to them. So they want to get to know you, and you know, hopefully I made a good impression. I try to help people to know what I'm about. So
Any events that you're doing to that you're participating for to help the community, any community or anything that you have done recently that or are you looking for help where people can volunteer in your campaign? And I know sometimes the candidates are looking for volunteers. In this case, I'm not sure if you're looking for volunteers.
I'm waiting. So the school board elections are going on right now. The May 1st is the day of the school board elections. And at least I live in Spring Branch. And in Spring Branch, it's been very contentious. And everyone is sort of focused on those elections. And so I'm kind of waiting. I don't want to like steal their spotlight. But after that May 1st deadline, I will be looking for volunteers. I would be happy for you to volunteer on my campaign, Raimundo, or, you know, become a paid employee. So, but yes, no, any students, adults, whoever want to volunteer on my campaign, I always welcome. I would love any help or support. You know, I'm only one person, and judicial, at least appellate court judicial races, are not high dollar races. You don't, it's not like you're running for a legislative position or, you know, governor. You're not working with millions of dollars. You're not even working with hundreds of thousands of dollars. Because appellate courts, you know, even among a group of lawyers, the judges that they see all the time are trial court judges. So to the extent, you know, there are a lot of donations or support going to judges, it's usually trial court judges. So yes, I'm happy for your help. In terms of me being active in the community, I have served as a CASA volunteer. I also was a board member for the Center for Success and Independence. That's an adolescent residential treatment center. I I mentioned maybe I didn't mention having served as a pro bono general counsel for the Montrose Center. And, right
Oh,
now, yeah, right now I feel like there's a lot of individuals with issues. So I've just been trying to help people out on an individual basis when I get a request for help.
awesome.
But when things go back to, more normal, I'd like to get more involved again. So.
All right. Do you have a website where people can go in case they want to volunteer, or do you have a number?
I did in the past. It's CheriThomasForJustice.com. It's deactivated right now, but it should go up in May.
All right, awesome. So in May, if you're looking to volunteer, you can go ahead and volunteer for Cheri Thomas.
You can
And
also
for those
email
who
me at CheriThomasForJustice@gmail.com.
awesome. So you got the email, y'all, if you want to volunteer. Once again, we're here with the candidate for the 14th Court of Appeals, Place 2, Cheri Thomas. And she's talking to us about elections, politics, women's and election and running for office. It's an interesting conversation, and there's a lot you can learn. Hopefully, if you're hearing us, you can run for office one day. If you want to run for office, you can motivate yourself. It's not very difficult, and sure you can share more information that it's not that very difficult to run for office.
It's not. I mean, if you, like I mentioned, you have to first gather a bunch of signatures on a petition. So you just have the toughest part of it is going around, getting out of your, comfort zone, introducing yourself to strangers, getting them to, take interest in your campaign. Also, one thing I have not been good about in the past, but I'm getting better at is just talking about myself a lot. I think we're all kind of raised that that's not, a good thing to do. It's bragging, it's rude. But when you're campaigning, you have to tell the good things about yourself. You have to, share, your qualifications, your values, everything, that might help the electorate know that you'll be a good person for the position you're running for. So, but in terms of running for, sorry, go ahead.
Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was just going to say the biggest things or the toughest parts of campaigning are gathering all those signatures. You go out to the groups, you meet all the people, then you participate in the screening and endorsement process. So what that entails is, several groups have what's called a screening, is where they send out a questionnaire, and they have a lot of questions about your experience, your attitudes about different issues. Some groups even have you, like for judicial candidates, they'll have you analyze cases. So we've done that. And then after you've filled out that questionnaire, there's an interview process. Usually you'll meet with a panel and they'll ask you some questions about your, your questionnaire that you provided. And then they, have a discussion, and kind of a core group will make a recommendation to the body of the larger organization. And then the body will get to vote for which candidate they'd like to endorse.
So, thank you. Thank you so much. I don't think I have had a person who has run for office explain all of that to the audience.
Yeah, of course. So, and then, I will say a large part of campaigning is also fundraising, which I'm not great at. I'm not, it's not my strong suit. I do not like asking people for money, but if you want to send me money, I'll take it. but no. But one thing to do to raise money, in addition, I know a lot of legislative candidates, they spend a lot of time calling folks and asking them to contribute to their campaigns. But another thing candidates can do is host events. Those events have become trickier now that, hosting events have become trickier now that we're mostly virtual still. But I know really creative things have happened. People have played bingo virtually. People have shown movies virtually. People have wine tastings or cheese tasting virtually. Just all kinds of interesting ways of engaging folks and getting them involved in their campaign.
Awesome. Thank you. That's creative. We have to be creative because of COVID-19 and everything that's happening. Once again, we're here with candidate Cheri Thomas and talking about politics and some interesting things on a Monday. Can you tell us? I know you already mentioned it, but for the audience, once again, why is it important to vote for those judicial offices? Why is it important that they do the research? I know that voting for the president, whenever those elections come, or the governor, are very important. We all like them, and we all like to go vote for those. But why is it that the ones who are in the bottom afterwards, or maybe those that we don't recognize the names, uh, what, why are those offices important? Why is your office important? Why the one that you're running for? Why should we elect you? Can you explain that to our audience? I know you already did, but
no, I can tell you a lot more about the court. So the 14th Court of Appeals is an intermediate court of appeals in Texas. And so just to back up a little bit, we have two court systems in Texas. We have a federal system and a state court system. So the 14th court is in the state court system. And I think most people are familiar with what's called trial courts, where you have a dispute, you go to trial, people have their day in court, and a decision is made, a judgment comes out. Well, the appeal court is the court that you go to after the trial. There's no, there's no trial because trial's already happened. It's what you can, what the avenue that you can pursue if you feel like something went wrong at trial, if you feel like a trial court made a bad decision, if you're not happy with the outcome. And in Texas and most states, we have intermediate level of appeal, like a middle level of appeal. And then we have the highest courts of appeal, which are everyone's heard of the Texas Supreme Court. The Texas Supreme Court handles civil cases, and then the Court of Criminal Appeals handles the highest criminal cases. Well, both of those two courts, they get to pick and choose which cases they want to decide. The intermediate courts of appeals, like the 14th courts of appeals, they have to address every appeal that comes before it. So a lot of times, if you have a dispute and you feel like the trial judge has really, made a terrible error, and your only recourse is going to be appealing that case to the Court of Appeals. And in Houston, we have, in Texas overall, there are 14 intermediate courts of appeals. In Houston, the Houston area, we have 2. That's the First Court of Appeals and the 14th Court of Appeals. And both of those courts handle all the appeals for 10 counties, including Harris County, Fort Bend County, Galveston County, Brazoria, Washington, Waller, Chambers, Grimes, Austin, Colorado. So if you have an appeal anywhere in Houston, it's going to come to the Court of Appeals, either the 1st or the 14th. They both handle the same area. And at that point, there's not going to be a trial. In courts of appeals, the trial's already happened. So what the Court of Appeals looks at is just kind of the record of what happened. They look at all the documents that were in the trial court's record. They look at, they have a court reporter's record of what was said at trial or a hearing. And so they study those documents, and then the parties get to provide what's called briefs, which are basically just written arguments. So, the court looks at the history of the case, looks at the parties' arguments, and then researches the issues in order to make a decision in a court of appeals. So it's pretty, it's pretty intense. It's pretty nerdy. You have to get, do a lot of reading, and it's very involved and usually, case specific. Like there are a lot of different issues. And so you have to be good at, handling all sorts of matters, looking at all sorts of matters with objectivity and, with a careful eye to make sure that you decide the cases correctly. And you have to work with other judges on the Court of Appeals. There are 9 judges on each one of these Court of Appeals, the First Court and the 14th Court, and each appeal is decided by a 3-judge panel. So you have to not only be able to, do your work and do it well, but you have to be able to collaborate with another judge as well. And so that panel may be the last set of folks to look at what must be a very important issue. If you've spent the money and the time invested in a trial, first of all, and then move on to devote more time and energy and money to an appeal, then it's really important. I mean, it could be, it's not always sophisticated issues either. There are a lot of business disputes, but there are also property disputes between neighbors. It's issues that impact everyone: divorce, probate, child custody. And so you want people who are smart, hardworking, fair, and who appreciate that everyone that comes before the court is also a person and entitled to dignity and respect. So that's what I'm probably rambling, but I feel like it's very important.
Yes, it is. And it shows that you are qualified and that people should look more into voting for you. Is a coming election in 2022, which is going to be a very interesting election in the state of Texas.
Yes.
And so you have run for office. Go ahead. Go ahead.
I was also just going to say that it's also important right now that we get someone into office who can get to work right away, because the courts, just like everyone else, have been having a tough time because of coronavirus. They were also delayed by the freeze. In addition to all those issues, they had a malware attack that rendered the court kind of paralyzed for a brief period of time. So they need candidates that are ready to work.
Yes, that was going to mention. That it's good that people are running for office, and sometimes they take that decision to run for office, and some of those folks sometimes that they're not involved in politics and they're community members, they're very active in their community, but sometimes you get candidates who they just run and they're running for office because they would just want a title, or they want the money involved for that office that they're not to help the community. And in this case, we have a candidate who's running for an office that wants to help the community. And that's something that you have to look, for those who are listening to us. You have to look that the person has credentials and they believe whatever you believe on. And also you have to make sure that the person is not running just because they want a fancy title.
Yeah. And I didn't finish with my experience, but I actually, after I worked for Baker Botts, I worked for another law firm, became partner there, and then I went on to actually work at the 14th Court of Appeals. So I worked at the same court that I'm running to become a justice on. And part of the reason I ran is because I just got excited about what I could contribute to the court. And we had a really rough, what I consider rough period of time where I was strongly motivated to become more involved and more civically minded. And what I have to offer to the community are my legal skills and my knowledge about the court and my ability to, to help improve the court, to continue the good things they're doing as well. So.
Awesome. What are you gonna have like an official? Let's see, whenever you're announced, or whenever you have candidates, whenever they officially make their announcement, they have like a gathering. I know it's COVID, but you understand during the pandemic. But are you gonna have any type of event?
Yeah, I probably will in June. I think that's when things will get more active. Also, judges are precluded from fundraising until, I don't know if it's late or mid-May. Other candidates can start fundraising, but we're not allowed to quite yet. So I have to, that event definitely cannot be until June, because I don't want people, a lot of times at your kickoff event, that's also a big fundraising event. People are excited. they want to be a part of your campaign, and I don't want to have to turn anyone away. And that's sometimes judges have to do that. They have to say, I appreciate your desire to help, but there are a lot of rules that apply to judicial candidates that don't apply to other kinds of candidates. So it's something that's kind of a little sticky sometimes. But yeah, go ahead. Sorry.
It's like when we're having this conversation here, I know that candidates who are running for judicial office, they're prohibited to get into policy and any type of that.
Right, because so many matters could come before your judge. You have to, I mean, one reason the public really respects the courts is because of the court's independence, because of their neutrality. Everyone wants to be able to get a fair shake when they have an issue come up. And a lot, political issues are so important, but a lot of the majority of the issues that come before the court are not necessarily political. They're divorce or probate or a dispute over a fence or a business dispute between business partners. So everyone wants to make feel that they're fairly treated, and they should. The court should be a neutral decider of the facts before it. So, and there has been in Louisiana, there has been a judge who's very vocal about certain policies or certain political issues. And when that happens, attorneys will do they'll file what's called a motion to recuse. Basically, they file a motion saying, I don't want this judge handling my case because she's publicly made these statements and they show she can't be fair in my case. So as a judge, you don't want to be in that position. You want to be able to address, all the matters that come before the court.
Awesome. Thank you so much for sharing that information. That's something that the public now knows, and hopefully they can remember that. I know that sometimes they get frustrated. I saw some folks that whenever, they were pushing cards, the candidates were pushing cards on the polling locations, and they were asking about, where are you going to vote for, Trump or Biden, or where are you standing on abortion, or where are you standing on certain issues? That's I know judicial candidates cannot speak on that. I'm sure everybody has their political views, but you're right on that about that.
Yes, I'm a Democrat, so that gives you just a general idea of my values for sure. But judicial candidates are not allowed to publicly endorse other candidates or speak on the issues. Now, it's really tough because, as a candidate, people are looking to you to be an example to the public too. So I don't think I'm going out in left field and saying that most judicial candidates are pretty opinionated. So, you have to kind of exercise self-restraint and discipline to you can't comment on what everyone else is commenting on Facebook, unfortunately, not all the time. So, it's tough because you're a person too, but you're seeking to fulfill a role that is bigger than yourself. You have to be a neutral arbiter. So
interesting. If one day I run for a judicial office, I'm not able to get into arguments on Facebook over policy. Awesome. So thank you for joining us, Cheri. Any final comments on or anything that you want to say for for the public?
I wanted to share that I think when the general public thinks about court, they focus on their day in court, but it's not only important what happens when people have their day in court. It's important what happens after that day in court. And we need judges on the Court of Appeals who are smart and thoughtful and fair. And I would aspire to all those values. Having experience working on the court, I know what it takes to handle cases fairly, efficiently. I value independence and integrity, like we've talked about, and I'm committed to fairness and justice. I think the best judges are humble and methodical, good listeners, readers, deep thinkers. They also have to be collaborative, like I mentioned, because they have to, on the Court of Appeals, they have to work with other judges. So it's important to have good working relationships. I know almost all the judges on the court, having worked there as a staff attorney. So I feel like I have a step ahead in that regard. I know all the Democrats and all the Republicans on the court, and I love the work. Frankly, I appellate lawyers have a reputation of being nerds among lawyers, like nerdier than the rest of lawyers. And I enjoy reading and researching. It sounds really cheesy, but that's always been my favorite part of being a lawyer. So not only do I aspire to do the job really well and make the public proud of me and feel confident in the fairness of the court, I really enjoy the work. And so I'm eager to contribute to the court, and I humbly ask for your support and your vote.
Awesome. And give us your name and your title and where can people contact you?
I'm Cheri Thomas. I'm a partner right now for Lewis Thomas Law PC. And we do have a website. The law firm has a website. It's www.lewisthomaslawpc.com. You can also contact me at cherithomasforjustice@gmail.com is my campaign email. I'm running for the 14th Court of Appeals, place 2, and I'm happy to answer any questions that anyone has about the court, about my campaign, and just general. I can give you a referral to a lawyer if you need one. So
thank you so much for watching us, everyone, here in Community Advisor RSR in a Monday talking about politics. I know it's very interesting. Who doesn't like to talk about politics? They get into controversies. Thank you, and thank you for watching us. Have a good evening.
thank you, Raimundo.